Former undercover cops of Reddit. What is the craziest thing you had to do to not blow your cover? I worked as a transcriptionist for a while, and I transcribed some tape taken off of body mics of undercover officers working a very notorious domestic terrorism case. It was crazy. They would sound like an absolute backwoods hill people lunatic while talking to their marks. Then later, when talking to the other police officers, they would sound all business and like a very professional person. Story 2. My cousin was an undercover ATF agent. They were trying to bust some guys for illegal alcohol distribution and were building a rapport by going undercover. My cousin doesn't take his ATF badge with him when he's undercover because if anyone ever saw it, he would get shot. Anyway, some hot-headed black and white cops came over and started harassing him. My cousin couldn't blow his cover. But pretty soon the police started to get physical and they beat the crap out of my cousin and the guys he's trying to get evidence from. They take them all into the police station only to find out that my cousin is ATF. My cousin was pissed because cops aren't supposed to beat people up. He is currently filing a lawsuit against that police department. Yeah, having to get beat up is a pretty crazy thing to not blow your cover. OP's cousin is dedicated to the job though, you gotta say that. That's impressive. Story 3. When I first got started in forensics, it was when chat rooms and webcams were taking off. So predators thought they would be able to figure out who was who on the internet since clearly you'll know you're webcamming with a 40-year-old dude munching on donuts instead of a 14-year-old girl. I was a naive 18-year-old woman who was just getting started in policing, doing some clerical work for my hometown police department when I heard a couple of people talking about how they were having a hard time chatting up creeps now that webcams were a thing. I told them why not just hire someone to act like an underage girl or boy and coach them on what to say and how to set up meetings to catch these guys. Lo and behold, I volunteered myself for a job. We set up a bedroom in one of the upstairs offices, complete with a bed, desk, and some posters from one of the officers' teenage daughters. I had to wear some of my high school sports clothes or pajamas while talking to predators via webcam. I passed notes back and forth with the team of officers and passed it off as trying to do homework while chatting. The hardest part was to still seem interested and innocent while this dude on the screen is telling me what kind of horrible things he would want to do to my body, thinking that I'm still a child. Edit. I've gotten a ton of questions in the comments or in PMs, so I'll try to answer them as best I can. What about fraud or entrapment? Regarding entrapment, we got around it, because it didn't really apply with the way we were doing things. I never actually went into chat rooms and solicited people via text or webcam. I didn't have to solicit anyone. They were literally waiting in the chat rooms ready to pounce. What usually happened was I would log in with a girly or teenagery handle and people would start sending private chat requests before I could even post hello on the feed. We often had so many that sometimes we had to let a few of them go because there were just too many for me to try and talk to. So we never actually tried to get them to talk with me. Oftentimes we couldn't get them to shut up. Once they got going, they had no inhibitions at all. If you go look up a teen chat, make up a cute handle, and just post saying hi, you'll get swarmed by predators trying to chat you up or trying to get you to cam with them. I don't recommend doing this because it will destroy any faith you have in humanity. Who did we catch? How many? We netted somewhere around 120 men and a handful of women. The most notable were a few clergy, 2 city councilmen, a state trooper, school teachers, and other people you would just trust around kids. All of them looked like regular people and seemed like people I would interact with every day, if I didn't have any idea that they were soliciting intimate material from minors online. Was there anyone that got away? Yeah, a few never showed. But there was only one that got away that I just know went after a real victim or had already done so already. That really made me worried. He would try and chat off and on when I was on, and he got a thrill out of telling me how he would like to tie me up and do all sorts of torture-sounding things to me in great detail. I actually started crying and he just laughed and said it would be fine after I got used to it. I don't regret doing this work, but it was quite the mind screw, especially at 18 years old. Another edit. Some people have asked how they can help, where to get resources on educating kids and teens to stay safe while enjoying the internet, or where they can report crime tips, so I'm going to dump some resources for everyone. Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have a cyber tip line in the US where you can report abuse or child content, as well as age-appropriate resources for child safety online and off. National Human Trafficking Hotline. Call, text, and chat hotlines for immediate help as well as resources on recognizing and reporting trafficking. Europol Child Abuse. Resources for those in the UK on reporting and helping exploited children. Yeah, this sounds like one of those jobs that really shows you the absolute worst of humanity. The things these people will say or do completely unashamed by their actions is absurd to me. They either need to be put away forever or serious help. It's hard to tell which one will actually help more. I feel like sometimes people are just too far gone. Also, I would usually not read out an edit like that because it's kind of boring, but at the same time, I feel like it's important with this kind of thing. It's a serious topic, so I treat it seriously. I hope that's all right. Story 4. As a former correctional officer, we had a situation where a major police department planted a cop in the prison to get information on a guy they believed was orchestrating hits from inside the prison. The warden knew and I knew by accident, but not a single other CO knew, nor did any of the staff, including medical. And that's the way they wanted it. He went through receiving, he was categorized and placed, it was wild. He was there for a week, got the info they needed, and got him out. It didn't become public knowledge that he was undercover until after I'd left, and it was a long while after as they were making a case. That was a surreal moment. OP, if you found out accidentally, it sounds like they did not do the best job at keeping it undercover. But at least it leaves you with an interesting story. Story 5. One time, a Homeland Security officer came up to my house undercover, flashed his badge, and asked if he could come in. Once he was in, he pulled out a piece of paper with my neighbor's face on it. He asked if I had seen him around lately. When I asked what he did and let him know I haven't seen him around, he told me what he was wanted for. Intimate assault, child abuse, drugs, the whole lot. Turns out he had assaulted his stepdaughter, and once he found out he was wanted, he went back to El Salvador. I thought they only flashed their badges in the movies, but turns out that crap's real. Story 6. Not a cop, but a guy my mom dated for a long time was. Older guy, in his 70s now. He was fresh out of the academy and at the Asbury Park riots. Sad, scary crap. And then there was an undercover narcotics cop for 14 years during the 70s and 80s with the NJSP. He was Puerto Rican and spoke Spanish, was an ex-Marine and became a state trooper. They utilized his ability to blend in with organized crime in the Latin community. He had to do coke in front of a bunch of dudes during a buy one night, and basically stuck his knife in and blew a mound up his nose. Then he started having a minor paranoia/panic attack that they were going to find out he was a cop. Thanks to the gram of blow he just took to the dome, probably. He was breathing heavy and went out for air. His heart was pounding out of his chest and he was panicking over how to get out of it. One of the gangsters came outside to talk to him. He's ready to run or fight. Guy just goes, "Man, I've never seen someone snort that much at once, man. You okay?" He sighs a huge sigh of relief and was like, "Yeah, I never did that much. I'm having trouble breathing." The guy was really nice, brings him a drink and they smoked a cig. Everyone is joking that he has the heart of a lion to take that much. He actually felt bad about locking that one guy up when it all went down. Think he said he tried to help him or get him a reduced sentence or something. There are other stories as well, but not enough time. Story 7. My dad did undercover for several years and talked about a druggie that he hung out with all the time, and even babysat her kids when she went out to get high. This went on for several months while they were figuring out who the big dealer was and acquiring warrants. He grew a beard, had a fake ID, drove an old crappy car. Eventually, they got warrants to bust a bunch of people in the drug ring, and he actually was part of the SWAT team at the time, and was part of the group that smashed in doors and arrested her and a bunch of others in the area. He had to wear a balaclava to protect his identity when with the SWAT team. He said it was actually really difficult because he had to become an important part of those kids' lives, and was kind of attached to them, and now they had no mother and had to be taken to Child Protective Services. I never got to ask him more questions about this before he passed, but I have no idea how he balanced this crazy second life and then came home, because he still acted like a normal husband and father in our family. That's really rough, having to basically raise children in part, and then all the while knowing that you're gonna bust their mom and probably take her away and they're not gonna have a parent. That's brutal. I guess the argument is that it's for the greater good, but it's probably hard to believe that in the moment. Huge props to people like OP's dad who managed to do this kind of insanely hard work. Hopefully, since it's just possession and probably not distribution, the charges on the mom weren't too bad and maybe she can get her life in order. I don't know. I can hope, right? Story 8. Not a cop, but fell prey to an undercover operation. I feel obligated to preface this with how amazed I am at how integrated this man was in our gang. If giving an Oscar-worthy performance is the standard, I have to say I'm pretty frickin' impressed by what you guys can do. Over the course of several months, this cop earned our trust. Hell, at one point, I would have said I trusted that man more than my own brother, who was also in the gang, by the way. To be fair, I caught my brother stealing product from us more than once, but I trusted him to not directly destroy my livelihood. Suffice to say, this cop's acting skill was one of the #1 factors that led us to getting busted. So this man, let's call him Dave, was absolutely fearless and tough as nails. One of our initiation rituals involved letting members of the group wail on you for 3 minutes, no holding back. If you were still breathing afterwards, you were in. After getting pummeled to the ground by 7 or 8 different men, Dave wasn't just alive, it was almost as if he enjoyed it. He was probably smiling because he got his foot in the door now that I think about it. To get to the craziest thing Dave did, I need to explain how our gang functioned. We start off being referred to as a number, both to protect identity and as a form of putting lower-ranked members in their place. Names had to be earned. We didn't exactly have a set criteria for earning a name, but members often had to bring in enough income for the gang, earn the leader's trust, and commit various violent acts for the benefit of the group, before a name was even considered. All names followed the same theme: astronomy. Our leader was known as Vega. The day Dave earned his name, Vega had him as a getaway driver for a group of members. Their job was to sneak into a rival dealer's house, steal his product, and escape in Dave's car. As they were making their getaway, someone opened fire on the vehicle, and Dave took a round to the forearm. Without even slowing down, he managed to get our guys back to the house using one arm to drive. After his arrival, Vega and I rushed him to the ER as he sat there, holding a jacket against the wound, trying to control his breaths. Within the next day, he made a full recovery. Once Dave got back, everyone showered him with gratitude and praised his badassery. Vega approached him with a name tag in his hand and pinned it to Dave's shirt, signifying that he had earned his right to be known as something more than a number: Sirius. I don't hold any grudges against him for putting us behind bars. That man saved my life. Wherever you are, man, thank you. You changed who I was for the better, and I will never forget the time that you earned your Sirius tag. I did not expect to hear a story from the people who were busted in here. And I gotta say, that cop does sound like a badass. I can barely drive with two hands, to be fair. This dude did it with one, bleeding out. Huge props. Oh, and also real quick before moving on, props to OP as well, realizing that the cop helped him turn his life around. That is some good character development in my books. Story 9. Not a cop, but I did work for the liquor board in the city next to my town, busting bars for underage drinking. When I would get served, I would have to text the officer in charge, and he would come in and take my picture with the drink and then find the bar. Typically a few $100s, and the bar would get a strike. 3 of these strikes and they lose their liquor license, because I was not allowed to drink any alcoholic beverages. Only once did I actually have to drink the drink served to me. I was at a sketchy biker bar, and they're known for underage drinking and already have 2 strikes. They're also known for getting rough with the informants, like some employees and patrons assaulting the kids. So I walk in and ask for a Budweiser and show him my real ID, and he serves me my beer. Before I can even pull out my phone, the bartender grabs my wrist and asks me if I work for the liquor board. I tell him no, and he says, "Okay, then chug your beer." So I slam the bottle of Bud and he lets me go, and then tells me, "I have my eye on you, boy," and then gets me another Bud. I then take a Snapchat of me at the bar with my drink and hightail it out of the bar. I then show the picture to the officer and tell him everything that happened. He heads into the bar and ends up finding the bar and the bartender and giving them their last strike. They end up taking everything to court, and I got called in as a witness, and I have to testify in court everything that happened. The bar loses the case, and when I'm walking out to my car, the owner yells at me, "Hey kid, watch yourself. You'll get what's coming to you." So far, nothing has happened to me. This happened about 3 years ago, so I don't think anything ever will. Story 10. Not a cop, but in college I took a few criminal justice classes. Our professor, who I will call Bob, was a cop for 15 or so years and had gone undercover in the 80s for a very long time. Bob was a biker as a hobby, and he was sent undercover to break up a drug ring in the biker community. Bob arranged to buy some drugs from the guy, and shortly after the buy, the dealer was arrested. The dealer's sister started telling everyone she thought Bob was a cop, and some of the other bikers started asking him questions. So a day or so after the sister started accusing Bob of being a narc, the entire group was at a bar. Bob told a few of the guys to meet him outside in a few minutes, and Bob told the sister he had some drugs for her and to come outside. When they finally got out there, Bob told her, "Where I'm from, friends don't call friends narcs." He then beat the crap out of her in front of the entire group. He kicked her as hard as he could between her legs, which is not as painful as a woman, but it still hurts. Then he punched her in her face 4 or 5 times hard. He said he didn't want to do it, but after that, no one ever accused him of being a cop again. Well, excuse me for being a wuss here, but is this even legal when you're undercover? I don't know the rules for everything, but that sounds like brutality to me. Or maybe even just over the top? I don't know. Because I get it. I get the idea there. It's a surefire way to prove that you are not a cop, right? But at the same time, if he went as hard as OP described, that seems like a little much. I don't know. I think even people who are addicted to drugs and in biker gangs or whatever still deserve to be treated as people. Story 11. Not an officer, but was on the wrong end of an undercover operation. In college, I developed a liking for opioids, and it quickly spiraled out of control. I couldn't afford my habit, so I started selling to afford my using. I sold very small amounts and only to my friends. It was a horrible thing to do, but addiction makes you so crazy and you don't think clearly. A kid I regularly sold to, I'll call him Larry, came over to my house one night with his best friend from high school. The kid looked about our age, young 20s at the time, and I considered Larry to be a very good friend of mine. I had known him for all 4 years we'd been at college and hung out fairly regularly. He asked if his friend could have my number as he was moving to our area for work and needed a contact. I said sure, and that was that. I never sold on campus, and for some reason this kid only wanted to meet me in the parking lot on campus. I kept telling him no until one time I finally hit a dry patch and needed all the help I could get. I agreed to meet him in the school parking lot. I gave him 2 pills for $60 and turned to get out of his truck. I felt a hand on my forearm and turned to see another guy with one hand on me and a gun in the other pointed directly at me. Figured I was getting robbed. Turned out it was the police, and my friend had set me and others up in an effort to get his sentence reduced. The system is so screwed up that their one goal is to arrest college kids on campus and dangle large sentences with mandatory minimums on them so they are forced to become a CI, just to avoid the hefty sentences attached to the mandatory minimums. They ROR you, and you're supposed to keep in constant contact with the undercover officer and supply him with names and targets they can arrest. The issue is you're not under any supervision, and you're not expected to rehabilitate yourself. Larry ended up continuing to use despite being a CI. The cops don't drug test nor help with the necessary rehab, they just want to make more and more arrests. It's a BS system that takes advantage of young, vulnerable addicts. Larry lived alone and was required to keep all of his dealings private so that the officer's cover wasn't blown, and Larry's status as a CI wasn't jeopardized. He went silent for a few days and no one was sure why. His best friend decided to see what was up and went to his apartment. Larry had OD'd alone in his apartment about 36 to 48 hours before his best friend found him. I didn't end up helping the cops and instead went into rehab, then jail, released on parole and concurrent probation. I was facing a mandatory minimum of 4 years, and the judge said I should thank him for his leniency, as I could have gone to jail for up to 30. Fortunately, I'm still alive. I know a lot of people who have lost the fight with addiction. I gotta agree with OP here, it's an absolutely BS garbage system. It would be a whole different thing if they actually cared about the people that were helping them too, right? Like, I don't know, getting them some rehab or just working with them to help them kick their addiction. Is that not what prison was originally designed for? Rehabilitation, not necessarily just punishment? I fully recognize that there are some people you can't rehabilitate. College-aged junkies? You can. Story 12. Used to be night manager of an adult toy shop. An absolutely hammered vice cop and his lady came in late one night, and the vice cop proceeded to brag about how he had been part of the team that helped to recently shut down a local strip club. Every Friday, the chief would hand him and his partner each $1,000 cash, and send them to the local strip club with instructions to do whatever they could to try and buy company and drugs. Apparently their first few trips were a dud, but after a while, the one in my store was able to cajole one of the girls into giving him a blowy. He nut in her mouth and then flashed the badge before she could even swallow. He then proceeded to demand to use our bathroom. I told him, no dice. Public restrooms plus adult retail is a bad combination for everyone. He said he was a cop and I told him that was irrelevant. He protested by peeing his pants in my store and telling me that I made him do it, before storming out with his lady. Well, that cop sounds like an interesting individual for a lot of reasons. Story 13. Answering for my husband because he's only a lurker. Also, this was from a simpler time before the internet. My husband and his brother worked for neighboring departments. Husband was undercover narcotics and his brother was a beat cop. One night, my husband was buying some crack from a group of dudes. One of the friends of the seller recognized my husband, probably from court or something, and the seller's friend started saying, "This guy's a freaking cop, I know he's a cop, I've seen him before. You have to tell us if you're a cop." First of all, that's not true. Second of all, my husband is a jerk. My husband replies, "No, I'm not a freaking cop, my piece of crap brother is." "How do you know my brother? Why do you know cops in city?" "Dude, your boy is a frickin' narc. I'm not about to buy from a frickin' narc." Seller and his other friends beat the crap out of the guy who recognized my husband. Husband left the location unscathed, but no crack.